Sound of gentle lake water lapping, a slight breeze, distant birds. The sound I remember most wasn't the music or even the screams, but that long, terrible sound of wood trying to tear itself away from the earth. It was the 100-foot cedar pier, my pier, giving up its hold on the bank, groaning violently beneath the weight of 200 unsuspecting wedding guests. That awful noise came just as the whole pristine setup, the tiered cake, the crystal champagne flutes, the terrified bride and groom, began its slow, silent journey, drifting with an almost casual confidence straight into the deep, chilly center of Oakhaven Creek. I remember standing on my sun porch, a fresh glass of iced tea sweating in my hand, the ice cubes clicking like distant applause, watching it all through my old Navy binoculars. 30 minutes earlier, I'd given Brenda my one and only warning, and now I couldn't help but mutter into the quiet morning air, "I told you so, Brenda." You never ever listen. You have to understand the context. This wasn't just some random lakeside house. This place, Oakhaven Creek, was my sanctuary. I bought this little cottage 30 years ago specifically to escape the noise, the traffic, and the petty tyranny of suburban life. My pier, which I built myself with my father's tools, extended into the water on a deeded parcel of land. It was sacred. And for years, the only interruption to that peace was the HOA president, Brenda. Brenda wasn't just a busybody. She was a self-appointed despot, the Tsarina of the shores, a woman who lived for the feeling of wielding that clipboard. She had those aggressively blonde highlights, sunglasses that blinded you with their price tag, and every complaint, whether about the exact shade of my mailbox or the height of my hydrangeas, was prefaced with that chilling, authoritative drone. As per the governing documents, we had been locked in a Cold War for years, me dodging her surprise visits, her passive-aggressive newsletters, and her incessant calls about non-issues. But this was crossing the line from petty bureaucracy into outright invasion. I'd walked out that Saturday morning, coffee steam kissing my face, ready for a peaceful routine, feeding the ducks, maybe checking the mooring lines. Then I heard it, the unmistakable, aggressive shriek of a power drill. I looked down the slope and my blood pressure spiked. My pier was gone, not literally, but visually obliterated beneath a colossal cathedral white wedding canopy. There were industrial speakers, crystal chandeliers hanging from my untreated cedar beams, and dozens of people in matching pastel outfits rushing around like worker ants on a mission. A man in suspenders jogged past me carrying a tray of tiny, perfect cupcakes. The absurdity of it just froze me. But then I saw her, Brenda in the center, headset on, barking like a drill sergeant. No, the floral arch needs to be 3 feet left. I want the doves released right when she says I do. I walked down the path, my bare feet crunching on the gravel, dodging extension cords and what looked like a portable champagne fountain. When I finally reached the pier, the energy of the whole production just washed over me, the sheer, confident entitlement of it. Brenda spotted me just as I stepped onto the planks, flashing a quick, practiced, empty smile. "Wes, you're awake." "Don't worry, we're being meticulous. We'll clean everything up afterward. It's for my niece, Brittany. She's had her heart set on a waterfront wedding." I didn't raise my voice. I kept it level, quiet, which often scares people more than shouting. "Brenda, this is not a community venue. This is my private, deeded property. You did not ask for permission, and you certainly don't have it. You need to take all of this down right now." She paused her barking into the headset, pulling out a glossy, linen-textured card, an invitation, not a permit. She waved it dismissively. "Oh, I cleared it with the HOA. Look," she said, handing me the RSVP card. It was proof of nothing but the date. "This is beautiful, Wes. This affects the whole neighborhood in a positive way. Think of the exposure." I folded the expensive card precisely in half and handed it back. My hands were shaking a little, not from fear, but from the sudden cold realization of how deeply entitled she was. "This is not legal documentation, Brenda. You are trespassing. You need to leave now." That perfect smile crumpled. Her eyes, hidden behind those monstrous sunglasses, narrowed. "Wes, don't be difficult. It's too late to move. The caterers are here, the guests are flying in. The photographer is setting up. You can't ruin a girl's special day just because of some petty property line dispute. She turned away before I could respond, dismissing me utterly, pointing at the DJ who was struggling with a power cord near my favorite old fishing chair. I stood there for a moment, absorbing the sheer, total lack of respect. They ignored me completely, the staff, the event planners, and especially Brenda, as if I were just a piece of faulty landscaping. That's when the shift happened inside me. The hot fury cooled, solidifying into something hard and calculated. I thought, you had your warning. That's all I owe you. I turned and walked back up the path, slow and deliberate, not saying another word. The truth, the thing that gave me my power, was that my pier wasn't permanently fixed. I'd been fighting with the pilings all winter, dealing with some serious rot, and I'd engineered a temporary, yet brilliant, quick-release system. It involved a custom steel coupling and a simple lever, designed to let me float the entire deck a few feet out, so I could access the underwater supports, without having to hire a ridiculous, overpriced construction barge. I reached the cool dark of my boathouse, locked the door, and went to work. It took me maybe 12 minutes of cranking and checking tension. Then I put my hand on the lever. I paused for just a second, visualizing the consequence. The chaos, the humiliation, and the feeling of pulling that lever was like setting a caged animal free. With a firm, satisfying thunk, I disengaged the pier completely. I walked back to my porch, settled into the rocking chair, poured myself that fresh iced tea, and picked up the binoculars. The ceremony had just begun. The groom, poor soul, looked like he was regretting every life decision he'd ever made. Then the groaning started again. It began subtly, a slow, gentle pull. The minister was mid-sentence about the binding nature of two souls, when a bridesmaid glanced toward the shore and frowned, tilting her head. The flower girl pointed, but no one saw what she was pointing at, the widening, glittering gap of water between the pier and the land. Then, someone screamed. It wasn't the bride, surprisingly. It was the caterer, who watched a portable heating lamp slide off the back edge. The panic was instantaneous, explosive. It wasn't just drifting. The pier was now slowly rotating, exposing the terrified guests to the full glory of the open water. A massive speaker system, poorly anchored, tipped and plunged into the lake with a huge, messy whoosh. The bride, bless her heart, completely broke character, dropped her perfect bouquet, and grabbed her veil as the sudden realization wind whipped around her. Brenda, naturally, was hysterical, running in circles, shouting, "A lawsuit! I'm calling the police!" All the while, the pier, my beautiful detached pier, floated steadily and confidently toward the lake's center. I watched, sipping my tea, feeling the warm satisfaction spread through me. Then my phone buzzed. It was Deputy Gary from the county sheriff's office, the guy I played poker with every other Thursday. "Wes, I'm at the launch ramp, Hank. You gotta tell me. That's not your pier with a full-blown wedding on it, heading for the deep end, is it?" "You're watching it, Gary," I said, my voice smooth as silk. "Did you?" "You know, I didn't touch a thing," I cut him off preemptively. I gave Brenda a warning that the structural integrity couldn't be trusted. The pier, it must have had other plans. It just wanted to explore. Gary choked out a laugh so hard he had to hang up. Down on the water, Brenda had located a megaphone, and her voice, thin, cracking, and frantic, boomed across the lake. She was demanding calm, order, but nobody listened. People were tripping over extension cords. Then came the rescue attempt. Two neighbors launched a pair of those flimsy plastic paddle boats. They looked absolutely ridiculous. Two squirrels trying to pilot a giant log in a hurricane. One boat barely made it halfway before tipping, sending a groomsman in a tuxedo and a bridesmaid plunging into the chilly water. The second boat reached the edge of the floating pier, but realized they had forgotten a rope. The pier continued to drift, dragging the paddle boat, which spun around in helpless, desperate circles. The ultimate twist, though, was the media circus. A teenager, who had been filming the whole thing, started a live broadcast. HOA floating wedding disaster. The comments went insane. Wedding turns into Titanic sequel. Kerren's barge of doom. Then the news helicopter arrived, circling overhead, loud and aggressive. Brenda, seeing the cameras, snapped back into public relations mode. She grabbed the microphone, plastering that terrifying fake smile back on. Thank you for joining us today for our beautiful, unique floating lake ceremony, she shrieked, her voice echoing over the loud chop of the rotors. We are thrilled to bring such a vibrant celebration to Oakhaven Creek. I almost dropped my binoculars, howling with silent laughter. She was actually trying to spin this disaster into a planned avant-garde event. Eventually, Gary and the proper rescue boat from the marina arrived. They took their time, moving slowly, savoring the scene. As they started ferrying the humiliated, sneezing and soaking guests back to shore, Brenda cornered Gary, launching into a theatrical, breathless monologue about how I had sabotaged her event. Gary just listened, nodded, and then very politely gestured her toward the evacuation boat. Brenda was the last person left on the drifting pier, as it was towed to the marina for inspection. She stood there, arms folded, an absolute picture of volcanic rage. She looked across the water and her eyes locked right onto mine. I raised my glass of iced tea one last time. A casual, elegant toast. The rage on her face was instantly replaced by a look of sheer, cold, destructive purpose. I knew right then with absolute certainty that the fight was just beginning. I spent the next 48 hours collecting evidence. Every angle from my security cameras, every word Brenda had spoken, every time she had dismissed my warnings. I had it all cataloged, time-stamped, and ready. The HOA meeting was a spectacle. It wasn't technically an emergency, but Brenda had called it one anyway, filling the notice with capital letters and passive-aggressive threats. The rec center was packed. The community had finally had enough. Brenda marched in, polished and poised, and started her carefully rehearsed routine. An unfortunate incident occurred. The pier was manipulated. No warning. I stood up, holding my ground. Actually, Brenda, I gave you a very clear verbal warning. You ignored it. I also gave you a physical sign of the property line. You invaded it. A ripple went through the crowd. Paul, a retired firefighter and the most respected voice on the board, stood up. He'd been silent on Brenda's antics for years, but now he was done. Brenda, he said, his voice calm and heavy, you have overstepped. You have endangered our residents, and you have, for the 100th time, abused your position to trespass on private property. This must end. The conversation quickly escalated from my peer to years of Brenda's petty tyrannies, arbitrary fines, unannounced property inspections, the way she treated the community treasury like her personal slush fund. The tide had truly turned. A motion was made and seconded to vote on her immediate removal as HOA president. That same afternoon, I sent the first arrow. My lawyer delivered a certified cease and desist letter to Brenda's door. The letter was short, sharp, and brutal, warning her that any future step onto my land would result in a full police report and a lawsuit for criminal trespassing and damages. She didn't reply to the letter, but I saw her from my porch, staring at the envelope like it was a deadly snake. I gave her a casual wave and went back to pruning my shrubs. Then came the real dynamite, the leaked emails. Someone, a disgruntled former ally perhaps, sent an anonymous tip to the board, exposing a chain of emails between Brenda and her niece. One thread explicitly detailed how to quietly prep the dock the morning of the wedding. Another thread, the most damning, showed Brenda instructing someone to attempt to disable my security system using a borrowed Wi-Fi jammer. The attempt to tamper with my cameras, the active concealment, was the smoking gun. At the next meeting, Paul read those emails aloud. Brenda sat there, stone-faced, defeated. The board officially voted her out 3-2. The Czarina had fallen, but the final, most satisfying blow was purely accidental. The Environmental Protection Agency, following up on a complaint about the contamination, probably related to the speakers and spilled lamp oil, determined that the only significant damage to the lake bed was caused by the heavy canopy stakes and the improper staging of the wedding equipment. The DEP issued a hefty $6,000 fine, not to the homeowner, not to the HOA, but directly to Brenda, because her name was on the single fake event application. Humiliated, broke, and stripped of her power, Brenda quietly sold her ostentatious house and moved out of Oakhaven Creek. No goodbye, no farewell note, just a moving van and a lingering scent of defeat. With the Czarina gone, the community collectively breathed a sigh of relief. The neighbors who had suffered in silence finally started talking to each other again. We even threw a small impromptu celebration on the water. A freedom float, they called it. Paul presented me with a prize, a plastic oar spray-painted gold, engraved with the words, "Best Dock Defense." The laughter from the neighbors was the sweetest sound I'd heard in years. I used the insurance money and the satisfaction of victory to completely rebuild the pier. It's now longer, wider, reinforced with concrete pilings and absolutely immovable. At the entrance, I posted the sign we all laughed about, but which carries a serious warning: private pier. Trespassers will be drifted. I sat back on my porch that evening, watching the last golden light fade over the water. The only sounds were the crickets and the soft lapping of the creek. Peace had returned, a deeper, earned peace. I thought about Brenda, wherever she was, trying to bully some new community into submission, and I smiled. But here's the thing about life on the water, and life in any neighborhood, really. Drama, like the tide, always comes back. A month later, my phone buzzed. It was Paul, the new quiet HOA president. His message was short, and it made my blood run cold, then instantly hot again. "Wes, do you know anything about someone trying to build a zip line from the top of Miller's Hill to the corner of your roof?" I stared at the screen for a solid minute. Then slowly, deliberately, I looked up the steep slope behind my cottage, and sure enough, tied between two massive oak trees was a thin steel line, running straight down toward my chimney. I had to laugh, a deep, tired, satisfied laugh. I shook my head, walked into the boathouse, and retrieved my binoculars. The battle for peace might be over, but the war for control of Oakhaven Creek? That, my friends, is eternal. So let me know what you think. Did I go too far? Should I have just let the wedding happen and sued later? Or was my retaliation perfectly justified for years of HOA abuse? Drop your comments below. Tell me your craziest neighbor story. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories from the shores. Sound of lake water lapping fades out.